Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor, Thomas Goss. I just thought I would jump in here with a couple of words before I play the mock up for this score by Christopher. And that is that just to say that obviously this is an incomplete sketch. It's not fully worked out. And I think that Christopher has sent this to me because he wants some feedback about where he could possibly take different sections and approaches and so on and so forth. So that is how I am going to be evaluating this. And I would really appreciate it if the community would be supportive with their comments and give Christopher a lot of ideas about how to proceed further with this kind of orchestration. Okay, I I know there have been several fairly polished, some even very professional entries put through recently, and I don't want this the whole purpose, just because of the polish of those entries. The purpose of these evaluations to be kind of diverted by that. Here is a chance for us to help out Christopher and to get him on his way to becoming a much more competent orchestrator who has got a lot of ideas and a lot of potential. So let's focus on that in our comments below, and that's what I'll be focusing on when I add my comments after the playback. All right. So let's have a listen to what Christopher came up with so far. Okay, Christopher. So let's jump back to the beginning. With some of these evaluations, I've been starting at the end and working my way back and so on, but we're just going to start from the beginning and work our way forward, okay? So we'll take this screen by screen, page by page, phrase by phrase, and we'll talk about like how well some ideas are going. What's the workability and so on. Just in terms of page layout, it's kind of interesting that I've cut off some of the extra white space, dead space in the entry that you sent me. See if you can set your page size, like not the score size inside the page, but the actual page size to 747 by 420, 420 high by 747 wide, and and then I think everything will fit in the page a lot better. There'll be, just naturally bigger staff size, and the resolution will be much better when I process it. A couple other things too is like you can see that the way that your application is notating the bar numbers, that they end up all over the place when there's a slur that crosses the bar and so on. There's probably a way around this, but the best way around it is to just put the number of the bar at the beginning. So like this on the first page, you don't need to number it. But like this, numbering every bar, it's more of like a recorded music, a sort of a practice, right? And this is concert music. Generally speaking, I just really focus on concert music for these orchestration challenges, and you can lay out your pages in a concert music style, except for, of course, having it in landscape mode rather than portrait mode on the image, so that it fits on a screen better. But yeah, it's just all we need is just a number at the beginning of each system, not a number over every bar. Okay. All right. So yeah, so just starting off, a nice sensible group of instruments. Here you have like your French horns, like all on one staff, and that's cool. Like if this is just a sketch, then of course, And I would say if it really is just a sketch, then you can just have single staves for your clarinets as well. Or I don't know. I mean, a double staff is fine if you want. If you have really different ideas, I guess that is different. Okay, so let's start here at the beginning. You have a nice little roll here on the harp, and and your flute starts off the melody above. The flute is so much stronger than than the accompaniment. Like you've marked mezzo forte, and then here you have piano crescendo and so on. It's a little random the way that the dynamics are marked here. Certainly, after a surge like this, you wouldn't need to mark mezzo forte again. Except I think that this mezzo forte is supposed to be for the oboes, right? So yeah, so the strengths of the different instruments are all like very very like they're you have piano in the French horns, right, and you have piano crescendo and mezzo forte, and it's really kind of would be very hard to follow. And the way the balance is on this, the trombones come in here, and it's really obvious from the playback that they are so powerful that they blow everybody else out of the water, right? It doesn't matter that the flutes and the oboe are still marked mezzo forte. This is an instance where the brass really should be marked down in power, right? They should be much gentler. So if you were planning some kind of episode here where it's sort of the winds gradually gave way to the brass, right, or the brass became more integrated into the winds until it finally came to an end here, which by the way is rather nice. Then I would say that like really really be careful about how much the brass are projecting so that you get a more seamless blend, right? So the trombones here should probably enter at more like at piano, right, rather than at mezzo forte. And these other winds here should be around the same volume as the flute. But here's the thing. We can sort of hear in the mock-up that the flute sounds like almost like a folk flute, right? And that's probably just the way that your sound set is is has got everything worked out. It has that really kind of really emotional but somewhat kind of a little sentimental kind of a sound, and that's fine. It's certainly all right. But like the thing about it is that you really in a passage like this, the flute does not need to be 2 degrees hotter than the rest of the instruments, 2 degrees stronger. Everybody could be piano, right? Everybody could be piano crescendo. I think you would just get a much more beautiful, more idealized sound if your flute were just at a regular soft dynamic. And then you're kind of like you add bassoon down here, and you can obviously hear that particular pitch doesn't really quite work with the harmony, right? So there are some moments in here where there are 1 or 2 bars that just really are, that don't really have a whole lot to do with the rest of your idea. And I would say don't, if you're listening back to the mock-up yourself, just cut it out, right? Just not, I'm not saying, hey, cut it out, Christopher. I'm saying cut out that bar, right? It almost looks like to me like you were copy pasting this clarinet bar onto the bassoon, but like not compensating for the fact that this was bass clef and this is this is treble clef transposing, right? So transposing this note is a C, right? So this playing F sharp, it sets up a like a diminished fifth, right? So like obviously not what was intended by Barvinsky right in here. So I would just say in general, just kind of looking at the first passage here, and looking at the effort that you went to kind of partially orchestrate everything all the way through the entire piece, I wonder if you're spreading yourself too thin. In the next orchestration challenge, which I would really love you to enter, could you possibly like work out each passage fully, right? Just really try to fully orchestrate each passage before you go forward, because I can tell you that like this, I don't think you are going to grow unless you do that as an orchestrator. So like your entry from last year was very similar to this. I felt that this is better. This is way better than the previous entry, but there's still a similarity between the two of just kind of having a very, very rough sketch approach where a lot of things kind of don't connect. There's some obvious things that just don't end up finishing. Like for instance, you have these these low brass pitches and the bassoon that just stop, right, rather than completing their journey to the to finish on a low E, right? So that can't be intentional, can it? And it would be so easy for you to just fix that just by supplying the sounding E. Now here it's not so critical because you've got the because this line is going all the way down to this, it's headed for the written F sharp sounding E. But here there are no other low notes, and you've set up this whole expectation in the listener that you're going to finish this off. So it doesn't sound like you're pulling a trick on the listener as much as it just sounds like you forgot to finish it, right? There are a bunch of other little details that apply to this particular score that are also oops, sorry. I have things that are making noise on my other computer. I had to turn them off. So what I really want you to do, Christopher, and I'm going to say this early on in this evaluation, so you have a chance to really absorb this and like maybe so it doesn't get put off till later and you're thinking of other things. I really want you to go back and check out like some of the compilations, like A, B, C, D, and so on, of the website subscribers, and also check out some of the like the minimum entries and dotted semi-brev and so on. Some of the earlier entries that really focus on the beginning of the piece. All right, and really like check out what those orchestrators did and what was the advice that I gave them. All right, because I think that will cover a lot of the different little things in here. For instance, things like having a slur over repeated notes, which means that you lose the emphasis. You lose the ta kind of feeling of the 16th going to the 8th when you do that. Things like that. And these slurs are just imported from the piano score, right? And then here you have a staccato under the slur, like as if you really wanted the da-da, like you weren't getting it. Well, the reason why you're not getting it is because of this slur. Just get rid of the slur. You don't need to have that staccato marking here, right? And there are quite a few other kind of things that are really strange. Like, for instance, here you are scoring in intervals on the same stem. So in other words, everything is in first voice. And here you have two separate voices for your flutes, where they could just be one and marked with the marking A2, right? A2, meaning a due in Italian, right? So with two players on the same part. So it's just, there's a lot of inconsistencies and, a lot of kind of basic things in here. So I really feel that like if you just really promise yourself next challenge that you're going to finish each, like completely finish each phrase, each section of the score to your satisfaction, right? And then move on to the next one rather than scoring out the entire one and then stopping, right? Because there are so many interesting things about this in here. Like this is almost a completed idea, right? But then when you threw in the trombones here, the trombones were so kind of antithetical to the continuation of the winds that the winds sort of pooped out, right? So what does that tell you? Is that maybe the trombones weren't the greatest instrument to bring in here. Maybe further harmony in the horns would have been a better step right in here. And then, instead of having the heaviest instruments in the orchestra, then you could bring back in your trombones to help out the bassoons, maybe a single trombone player, right, to take on this line, rather than just really massive sounding players playing against our weaker wind instruments right in here. So just like that would be like the kind of advice that I would give you on this opening section. And now here you're continuing on, and this is just really beautiful. Like this is another section of this piece I just would have loved for you to complete. I feel like you would get more value and better training and better feedback from me if this, if you had just entered at a minimum level and sent me just this page completely worked out, spending like a week or two on it and just finessing all the different things that you could do with all the gifts that you have, right? And not to say that like I don't appreciate the support that you sent me. My God, I am humbled by your generosity and each person's contribution to both the channel and to the appeal that we did. It's just massively valued, right? But I don't want you to be in a position where you feel that you're not really, you're not getting enough out of it to go to the next challenge and then orchestrate in a way that's much more accomplished, right? So just really, I would love you to do a complete entry, like all the way through, support at the dotted brev or the longa level next year. Absolutely, I want that. But what I also want is for you to really try to work out each section as you go. Okay. All right. So I'll get off that hobby horse. All right. So right in here you've got a kind of a nice thick scoring here. Flute on top, clarinet doubling, and then an octave below you've got clarinet here, and then bass clarinet adding a third octave. Okay, and then, I don't know, the bass clarinet sort of poops out kind of halfway through. It's a shame because it would have been nice to see that triple octave continue. It's not too badly balanced. You can put more weight on the top, and then the other instruments don't need quite so much thickening. The thing that I feel a little regretful about here is that you didn't keep going with your pizzicato right in here. I would say that like this might be just a little too much pizzicato and a little too jolting, right? I mean, you can sort of hear that in the mock-up, right? That it's like really pluck, 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 pluck. While this is kind of beautifully, what would they call it? Soughing, Suoghing, right? Just like almost like gentle, gentle whispering of the breeze in the tall stalks of wheat or whatever. Right? I love that word, but it's a $10 word, so I don't use it that often. Right? And giving everybody the same dynamics, right? Piano, crescendo to mezzo forte. But see here, I don't think you need to be mezzo forte with your pizzicato. It's not like you need to boost the pizzicato in order for it to be heard over soft winds. Everybody should be piano, right? Just like same as here. This should be piano. Everybody should be piano here. Or everybody could be mezzo piano or whatever. And you should just continue on with your whole idea here. Now, did you notice how you left these little gaps here? Because they're the same as the gaps that are in the lower left-hand staff of the piano part. So you don't have to do that. You could just pick a pitch from the harmonization, right? Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of, kind of, yeah. It kind of brings up another problem, right? So while we have got the unison melody above, and we've got our harmony below, right? So this is like a sounding F sharp, and this is a sounding D. Okay, the problem is that the bass clarinet is like down a tenth from this pitch, right? So it really is tracking from below. I mean, that's a cool idea. And it would be interesting, like I said before, it would be interesting to see it go all the way through. So the problem here is that the piccolo is just stomping it out, right? But the identity of like the little holes that you could fill in here with pitches from your middle voice would help this continue on in like one solid line, right? So in other words, you could put in an E here, right? Because there is a sounding E here in the B flat clarinet, right? And you could put in a like say maybe a sounding D here, the same pitch that's being played by bass clarinet, not at the same register, but the same function. And that way you could keep going, pluck 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 pluck, right? And you wouldn't have to stop. And the same thing in here. You could be supplying some of the pitches that naturally occur. Da da da. Right. So it just like it really fills this in rather than just playing the exact notes that are in the lower left-hand staff. Right. Because what is the left hand doing? It is playing all those pitches and then it is reaching up and playing the thirds as the middle voice and it's coming back down and playing this and then it's reaching up and playing the thirds and then coming back here. Right. So obviously, like the flow of the left hand in the piano recording that I've supplied is the guide for this function, right? Not the raw notes that are on the page, right? Okay, so but anyways, you kind of stopped halfway through, so we kind of don't know how it would have ended here. But just one thing is just like this is not a smooth transition, obviously, so it just really feels more like a sketch. So I'm just going to continue on that assumption, all right? Yeah, watch out for your stem directions. I don't know what this is. I mean, I'm just seeing that a lot, like what looks like copy pasting from one part to the other, and then you end up with the stem direction being down instead of up. I wonder if that is something that it happens in your application. Yeah. All right. Now here on this next screen, we see like the beginnings of some really great sketches in here. So, like, my question is, why didn't you keep going? I mean, you have such great ideas in here. I mean, I really love, like, the way that you scored this out. This bum, bum, and then what happened? There's nothing, right? There's no more chords. So, my feeling about this is that the top note, see, right in here, you're basically covering, with your trumpets, you're covering, like, the lower part of this chord. I feel that if you want a nice, beautiful, round sound here, it would be better to have the trumpet double the top, right? And then if you want unity on all four pitches, then you could throw in the trombone as well and just have a really nice mixture of cylindrical and conical brass, rather than just having a couple of notes supported in the trumpets. But the strength of this, which we're not really seeing, right? Like, how loud is everything supposed to be? We don't really get any clue here, right? There's no dynamics before. And so here, I don't know how loud this is supposed to be compared to the harp, right? So if you have harp in here and clarinet sort of playing these staccato notes, trading off to oboe, then you're immediately setting up a problem, because the brass are way too loud. Loud enough, the horn loud enough to play a nice G up on top there would probably at least be mezzo forte. So mezzo forte horns, and same thing for the trumpets and so on and so forth. The harp is gone. It's dead. It is out of there, and the clarinet can barely be heard. And you can sort of hear that in the mock-up, can't you? Right? So if these chords are going to be played, if you want this voicing, these chords to continue on the way they are, you're going to have to rethink the way that you have scored this out. If you do want brass in here, and you do want this, you want everything, then you're going to have to drop your horns down an octave, right? And I don't think that would hurt at all. I think it would sound actually gorgeous, really, to have that function in the middle while you like reverse things and have the left hand pattern up above. I think that would be really great, and doubled with harp and so on might be cool. And then right in here, you go to these to the woodwind section, kind of interpreting things. So like how this would lead into this, that would be something that you would have to work out, right? But I don't think that you should score it like this, just having just little, having huge gaps and little bits and pieces of different instruments kind of showing up. That's why I'm assuming this is a sketch, right? So if I'm completely wrong about that, then please forgive me, but you're not giving me any context. Like, I didn't get a long note from you saying, hey, Thomas, can you give me suggestions on XYZ? Or, Thomas, let me explain what I'm doing here, right? So I just have to guess from the context. Looks like a sketch to me, right? All right. So all of this really just needs a lot of cushioning, so you need to decide where that would come from, right? So if you're going to be elevating the left-hand function into kind of its own little rippling melody, then I think that the cushioning for you is strings, right? And then, like right in here, you drop the... Did you notice like how unnatural things felt in the mock-up? Like once, like you just kind of went back to that, da-da kind of idea without the little boop, 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 beep, boop, 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 right? So like the music, the flow of the music wants to have both things in it. So you're just going to have to work it out. I would recommend strings. If you're going to have woodwinds this high, if you want harp and so on and so forth, then the proper accompaniment for this, which will not wipe out your harp or take away any enjoyment in listening to the different woodwind instruments play this, is strings rather than winds or brass. That's my feeling. Like if you avoid the winds, then you can continue to use them to interpret the melody as you have chosen. Now, I will say one thing about taking this approach, taking this strategy, is that you are completely you are taking a lot of the suspense, a lot of the sense of culmination out of the beautiful wandering melody that arises, which you really actually fairly nicely scoring right in here. Try to match the same articulation. If this is staccato, this should be staccato. I should think, unless you really want a change when you get to the top here. And it's not enough to give us a crescendo here and then finish the crescendo there. These players have no idea what each other are playing, right? So, like, if this, say, is like, say it's piano crescendo to mezzo forte, then this needs to be a mezzo forte at the beginning. Okay, and there's, if you supply the number 1 here, then there's zero need to have a second voice rest, right? because we already know that that's number one because we have, right? So if you have a second voice rest, you don't need the number one. And if you have a number one, you don't need the second voice rest. But I would just say you don't need the second voice rest. You need the number one because you don't need to have your stems pointing up all the time. All right, the number one gives you permission to get rid of the second voice rest and to have all of your stem directions be normal. All right, same thing here, although it's less critical. All right, so so to get back to the whole concept of giving away, like it's like you're giving away the joke or the like, it's almost like you're looking at the bride before the wedding day in her bridal dress, right? So by all of these things are reaching higher and higher and higher, and like this is actually going almost as high as this, right? So it's as if what was beautiful and extraordinary and breathtaking about this wandering melody has already been covered. The ground has already been covered. So what's the big surprise, and what makes this special now, right? Would be my question to you. And this is rather strange. You have the roll in the harp. It's beautiful, and then this roll here, and then I think that this is supposed to connect with this in some way, but I'm not sure if this is a bass line or if it is intended to be like looking at the pitches of that bar, right? Like you're covering some of them, like you've got the A, and here you got the F sharp and the C, and then leaving out the F sharp in the middle, and so on. And then here, this is strange. This is a literal transcription of the pitches position on a staff in treble clef, right? So it's like it's not in the same. It's so it's completely off. If you were intending to transcribe what was going on, you missed the fact that there was a treble clef here, right? Which would take everything up a tenth, or excuse me, take everything up. Sorry, an octave and a sixth. I meant to say. So and it's be that as it may, it is so far away from connecting to the trumpet here that I cannot feel that this would be an effective approach to interpreting what Barvinsky had in his score. So, couldn't this be played by trombones? Like, kind of, more accurately, like keeping everything down an octave from where it was. Connecting up and then getting into this, so you have this nice, these nice little accents in here. And then this is cool in here, da 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 da, and there's a lot of potential in here. But it is still a bit all over the place. It's I'm not sure that this trombone accompaniment works here because, as I've said in other evaluations, like the whole purpose of the melody at the allargando is to create a sense of wandering, right? There is nothing happening in the left hand in this bar in the piano score. So there's no need to supply anything. All you have to do is just set a beautiful, some beautiful voice here to play a nice flowing melody, and you've done your job. There's really no need to kind of add these dotted rhythms and this other kind of stuff in here. All right, I feel this is an intrusion. You don't need it at all. But what you do need is that that wonderful left hand in the bar before, da 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 da. So, sorry, there's going to be a little bit of noise. My son's birthday party guests have arrived a little early, so I'm just going to talk through it. I'm on a roll here. I don't want to stop. Hopefully they won't be too noisy. All right, so here we get to the C section. All right, and it is that part where the left hand is playing these octaves that sort of build on top of each other and kind of go back and forth and so on, and very, very calm melody. So, like here, you're kind of giving yourself a few different options. You've got clarinets and octaves, which are quite pungent, and here you're like starting with strings and then dropping out the upper strings and so on. And like I'm really not seeing any of those the octave accompaniment. Like there's little bits and pieces of it here. So I'm kind of curious why it doesn't start here and go dun 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 dun. And like there's no need for the bass clarinet and the bassoons to be playing the same thing, right? That's heavy enough already, right? Maybe they could be trading off with each other, so you get more range. You could have maybe the bassoons going bum bum, and then the bass clarinet going bum 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 bum, right? But I would say do it all the way through. Don't just start at 5 bars after C, right? You have to build. Like it seems to me in a lot of your sketches here, you have like little bits and pieces of ideas scattered over several bars. But I want to encourage you to try to sketch in a different way, okay, Christopher? I want you to really like imagine what the first 2 to 3 bars would be like all together, right? Rather than just having a little over here and a little over there and so on and so forth. So give yourself a nice strong start. So if you really intend, if you intend this to be like strings going all the way through, just really score it out in all the parts. And then you can just sort of leave gaps afterwards if you're kind of not sure what to do next. And you could even just write little notes on the score saying, hey, Thomas, I'm not sure if clarinet's balanced here or whatever. Okay? But yeah, I mean, I feel we've got a wasted opportunity here. This dun 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 dun. Yeah, slightly backwards rhythm. Dun 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 dun. Anyhow, all right. So it's strange. Like there are, okay, here we got the reverse. We have reverse direction on the stems, and here we got the stems going the right way, but reverse direction on the tie. It's kind of strange. I'm wondering what application this is. All right. So anyways. Yeah. Yeah, so it's just yeah, so if you had intended to trade off from the violins to the clarinets here, that doesn't connect. All right. It's not exactly, it's kind of weird. Yeah. Right. Once again you have like a big gap. Like you have your harmonization scheme at a tenth rather than at a third. And then yeah. And then here, these aren't octaves. This is a fifth, and so on. So there's just a lot of different things happening that don't quite fit the transcription, that are a bit experimental, I guess. So clarinet and B flat. Right. So taking over the melody here. I just wish that if this were going to flow into this, there was some sort of dovetailing. Maybe they could be at the same register, like up an octave for your clarinets or something. Yeah, and then see, and here you have your flutes in a completely different register doing the middle voice stuff, like da 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 da. Yeah, so it's like just with so much switching around of the different functions, it's kind of hard to follow what is supposed to go where, and just like how it all adds up. So it doesn't have quite an even sound there, right? So just watch out for putting different functions in different order in different places, right? Just really try to have a really strong conception of how that sounds and how it'll all work out and how it will connect to the next idea before you flip a function to a different register, okay? So here in the mock-up, you can really hear how like this whole idea of the trumpets going back and forth here in octaves when there's, and then these other instruments here when there's nothing but flutes above, it just really kind of isn't working out, and it doesn't connect to what happens later, although this isn't so bad, right? Okay. All right, so I am going to suggest something to you, Christopher. I feel there have been some resources shared in the group. There are one or two orchestration teachers who are kind of just getting started out, and while like sometimes the information is a little rough or perhaps a little generalized, there have been some pretty good like starting strategies that I think would not be a bad idea for you to try, like as a developing orchestrator. All right. So the first thing is, I really think that you should work out what instrument is going to get the melody all the way through. And here, like, obviously you're doing this, you're working that out, right? But just kind of to add something while it's still on my mind, did you notice how it just feels a kind of tortuous in the mock-up to get through this section, right? And the reason why is because there you're not amping up the tempo, right? That's like it. There isn't a. I don't know if you checked out my my template or not, but like I push the tempo faster and faster as this goes because that is what Violina Petrochenko, who is our model of how this should sound, that's what she does. Okay, and our next, I'm really happy to say that I have a knockout recording by somebody who like is good enough to be a concert pianist, but is actually a university professor. And it is just a fine pianist, and his eloquence is just beautiful. Oh man, just so gorgeous. I cannot wait to share it with you. But here's the other thing too, Christopher, is that like follow the recording. Like I could create a template and you could use all the data off of that template, and you could, use it to populate your score with, just like drop a chunk of it here and a chunk of it there, copy paste all the way through merrily, and that's fine, right? It's the decisions that make you an orchestrator, right? More than it is the drudgery of writing out every single note. Okay, that's cool with me. But like, you should really listen to the recording that I supply, right? Because like that is the guide. And what happens in that recording? Violina starts to amp up the pressure just in terms of like the intensity, and part of the intensity is getting a little faster and a little faster until finally when she gets here she is just thundering along. She's another great pianist that we were so lucky to work with. I mean, we have just lucked out every step of the way. Like that there was such a great recording of the Faya Andaluza on IMSLP already. And then the year before that, in the middle of COVID, Sofia Urivayeva stepped in and she did just one of the most beautiful recordings of the Nadia Boulanger's piece that I've ever heard. Just so eloquent and charming and gorgeous and to die for. Really, really great. So that is what I recommend to you, is just really listen to what our pianists are doing in these challenges. All right, just like how do they connect the phrase? How do they push the tempo? How do they create like a dynamic or a tempo inflection? And just follow that lead, because they, a lot of times they have the, they grew up with that music. Like Violina, like she is a Ukrainian concert pianist. She grew up with the Barvinsky. She grew up admiring him and knowing his life story and, that tragedy and and the music that flowed out of it. So really follow that, follow that recording more than you follow the notes that I supply in my template for your, just for your convenience. Okay. And I think that like if there's any way for you to work off of the template from the application that you've got, like maybe drop in, I don't know how well your application does copy pasting, but if you just drop in like the piano staves below and then just take bits and pieces of it and just kind of copy paste it into different places and like listen to how it sounds, right? And maybe create a couple different drafts of your work where you you can go back and forth between the two and see what you like. If like maybe you have brass playing the melody here at D at first, or flutes playing it, right? So so it's rather strange. See, it's almost as if you're of completely two minds about something here, right? So like here you got the octaves way up high, like the cascading octaves, but you also have the you also have like clarinet and the second, like the second players like playing that same note, the same F sharp, and then here you have those notes taking over the melody and so on. So what it suggests to me is that you didn't have like a general plan for this. So I mean, it's really easy. Just look at the piano score, right? You can see in the piano score there are these cascading octaves that go all the way from the top to the bottom, right? So you should make a plan. Okay, I'm going to figure out who's going to play that, and then just score it out for a few bars. It could just be maybe even 2 or 3 bars. and then decide, okay, well, who's going to play the melody, who's going to get the harmony, and you work out those details, right? And then once you've got those all in place, then build on that, and so on and so forth. So like here, I'm kind of feeling like the octaves are moving through 3 bars rather than just moving down each bar, dropping through each bar each time, right? So that would be the first problem to work out, right? And then here, like, just everything just really works together. We have big surges of color, right? Da 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 bum. It doesn't quite, the flutes don't quite connect with this, right? And this doesn't quite connect with this enormous surge of color, right? So obviously, like, if this is as delicate as it is in the piano score, right? Then I'm not sure that this really, that this really connects with the idea, and if you have this amount of weight followed by just a few brass instruments, right? So that's another reason why I think that this is just a sketch, right? So the brass instruments are playing that sort of Ravel section, right? But here's where I would build up the texture, right? Not here. Like, don't just drop in a huge chunk. Get there gradually. Figure out how you're going to do the octaves dropping through the texture, right? And who's going to carry the melody, who's going to do what for the next 7 bars, right? And then once you get a handle on that, figure out how you're going to build from that place using your brass here, pushing forward. Now, having said all of that, I got to say that you are really pushing your trumpets up here to screaming levels, right? You've got a high C sharp in your B flat trumpet, right? So, I mean, yeah, it would be like high B on a C trumpet, right? So it is a high note. Yeah. So I mean, it's a nice idea. It's just possible, but like, we need to see what is going to be accompanying it. Or even if if you sent me a sketch like this and you had worked out like what the bass was going to be like, those leaping octaves, how are they going to be played? And you absolutely cannot put it in oboe. Could you hear the oboe against the trumpets there in the mock-up? Right. Use your ears as a guide to a degree. Right. They're in order to take on those functions, they're going to have to be down where the trumpets and the strings are not blasting away, right? So yeah, so once again, really, really be careful about swapping the registers of functions. Raise your right hand and repeat after me, Christopher. I, Christopher Fryman, will not swap the functions into different registers until I have worked out the scoring for the passage. All right? So that is one thing I want you to think about. So if you find a reason as you're working out who's got the melody, who's got the accompaniment, blah, 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 if you find a reason for the functions to be higher, lower, it doesn't quite matter like whether things are higher or lower. You could have I myself have like added an octave on, even 2 octaves onto some melodic parts when I was orchestrating. The question is whether or not the functions cross each other, right? We've already had a huge problem in this that has been revealed in this this particular challenge of the melody note in the prologue being put below the harmony, which turns it into a minor chord rather than into a 6 chord, like a very gentle, impressionistic 6 chord, right? So it's things like that end up changing the meaning of the music. Even if you are completely working everything out and your chops as an orchestrator are professional, then then you still have to be careful about that kind of stuff. All right, and throughout here, I know it's just a sketch, but it would be nice if you like here you work out like who's playing what. Try to do that for all your entrances. Okay. All right, now here we're getting to the dun dun dun. So you're kind of adding like a melody note in here. Not sure that I'm on board with you with that. I wonder why that, if people were, if the whole concept of the tie didn't come through because of the pounding chords in between, and so this was misinterpreted as a separate melody note, which I saw in a couple scores ago. Yeah. Yeah, and then this could have been so awesome, could have been so epic, right? Yeah, maybe accent marks on these string parts here. Yeah, and then here, like if you let's say that you do have blaring horns here. Let's say that you eventually fill this in with with barking mad, no barking accented trumpets right in here. How will your flutes be able to play at all against that, right? How like let's say that you don't change anything. Let's say you leave it in just a few notes here, playing these D sharps in your horns, which sound much better in tuba and so on, maybe double basses. But all right, let's see that we leave this exactly how it is. How can this second flute player, playing in its absolute weakest register, playing all the way down to a low B, right? The very lowest possible note. How can it be heard at all against all of this slamming around in these other parts? How can it be heard against the first oboe pushing down to its bottom B, which is like about 10 times as loud as the flute's low B? All right, wouldn't it have been better just to have like A2 flutes on the top? Or even better, like clarinet. Like clarinet would work so much better here in terms of being able to be nice and loud and so on. So yeah, it's just there's a few bits and pieces here. All of a sudden, you have 4 clarinets here, right? So watch out for stuff like that. All right, so now we're getting to the epilogue, which it sounds pretty cool actually. Yeah. You've got very, very high tenor clef scoring in your bassoon. You might as well put in a tenor clef right here so that the pitches are easier to read. The main thing that you should really think about, though, is like what is the quality of tone there, right? It's actually quite beautiful, but how can it have any competition against horn played in that same register? Right? The horn... first horn right here will be so much stronger than the tenor register bassoon. It's just no contest of the clarity of sound. Your horn player would have to be playing like pianissimo here to the bassoon's piano, and it would still sound a little loud compared to the bassoon. Especially if you're going all the way up here to this F sharp, right, and playing an accent on it. Even with the dynamics moderated in the horns, it's still going to win hands down. I mean, it's a cool idea though. Don't get me wrong, Christopher. Like, what if the combination here instead of octave horns, it was like octave cellos, right? Then you would really hear the beauty of this. Or it could be octave, like an octave duo, like 2 cellos playing solo, or it could be a solo cello below and a solo viola above. The solo viola could be doubling the bassoon here, and then it would sound really, really cool. I love the idea of these winds being soft here. That's exactly what's needed. Yeah, see, suddenly it got really, really great. Yeah. There's still some weirdness in here, though. Needs to be worked out. Listen to your mock-up. Listen for notes that are off, okay? Yeah, and then, like functions disappearing, things like that. Dropping certain functions really, really low where they kind of don't make harmonic sense. Yeah, just really, seriously, everybody. I saw this in at least a dozen scores in ways that actually hurt the score of like flipping the functions. Right, just only do that if you've really worked out that it makes everything stronger. And then here you just have like, you know, so right in here, this kind of didn't make sense, right? This is not really exactly what happens. So you're kind of going da 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 da. It kind of, I missed the whole idea of traveling downhill. I'm wondering if these blank staves here, without any rests on them, are indications of where you had added something and then erased it later, but not put the rests back in. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I don't know if this is a satisfactory ending. I mean, especially with thinking about Barvinsky's intentions to really climb down further and further and further till he left everybody on, just sitting on a hillside looking over the fields of grain with the beautiful blue sky above, right? To sort of imagine. So, all right, so look, Christopher, I really want you to, just think about all the things that I said about how I want you to approach this. First is I want you to score phrase by phrase rather than just going through the entire thing and having a little sketch here and a little sketch there. Okay, just really complete an entire phrase of one section and then go into the next section and complete that, and so on. Right? Because I don't feel that I am able to offer you enough in the format of these kinds of evaluations with with like a 5-minute piece that is fragmentary all the way through, right? It just becomes me saying, well, you should put this in here or watch out for that or blah blah blah, but I'm not really giving you any information, any real constructive feedback that builds you into a stronger orchestrator, except for just some generalities. You know what I mean? So I mean, I just feel I could offer you so much more with even if you just sent me like section A, right? That would be perfectly, that would really really work well with me. Now, like having looked over everything that you sketched here, I mean, you have really great ideas. You have a sort of a sense. I feel like you're kind of grasping at the different threads of really great ideas, but I'm not seeing you weave them together, right? And I really want to see, that's what I really want to see in your scoring, right? So like the next challenge is, even if you just do like the first 8 bars, which are absolutely gorgeous, by the way. Yeah, actually, I think it's 4 bars, or actually, no, like the first passage. Even if you just did that and just really worked it out all the way through, what all the instruments were doing, just sent me something that was, it still doesn't have to be an absolutely complete orchestration, but like organized enough to where I can give you the feedback that you need to make it even stronger. Like I said, I feel like I'm not giving you feedback like with what you're sending me. I'm not able to give you the kind of feedback that builds you as an orchestrator. Right? That's my biggest worry here. So it's just like, focusing in, just on each passage as something that you're kind of creating for a listener, right? So it isn't so much an exercise in like a study, like can I get better as an orchestrator and so on and so forth. You're actually working on behalf of an imaginary listener, or that listener could be yourself, to just really try to pull together the threads so that so that they fit and that they become really really satisfying to you and like pull you forward into more and more integrated, worked out scoring. Okay, so that is my that is my real strong fervent hope here, because like I mean, I really want to offer you stuff that builds you up, makes you better, makes you keener, makes you really kind of look forward to these challenges and like the possibility of creating something that could be something permanent, something that would get performed, something that would like really thrill a listener, right? That's kind of, I think that's the end goal, is to get to the point where we've got those professional chops, right? and I see that in your work. I see a lot of beginnings of ideas. I see a lot of ideas that are almost complete, except something kind of happened halfway through, and I kind of, I want that sense of incompleteness to be something that you work on before you go to the next section, right? So you really feel like you have worked out why things work the way they are, and you are aware of how the entire passage works, right? Rather than just an idea of doing one thing stuck on an idea of doing another thing. So it's all one idea moving forwards. So that's just my, my strong hope, because there's a part of me, like, I'm just so grateful for all the support that you sent, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I really feel blessed by your help, and I'm really gratified that you were one of the many people who stepped up to this appeal, and helped out our friends in Ukraine, and and I'm so grateful for the support that you've had in the past supporting the channel, and your presence in the group. It's just priceless. Okay, so I'm really hoping that people watching this will have some constructive critiques. That's really, really important. That would make me incredibly happy to see people making some suggestions that you could use in maybe improving this, or maybe they'll find a way of putting what I need to say about this in a way that, like, makes more sense, right? But having said that I really do want you to participate next year and take on that really terrific piece that I'm thinking, that there'll be an option A and an option B to this piece, and there will also be an additional option of how to score it. Anyways, with that cryptic comment, I think I will stop for today. I had to do a bunch of this evaluating in a row rather than taking breaks, so my voice is starting to give out a bit. So I want to thank you all for viewing. I want to thank you all for your support of Christopher, and for leaving him comments that are useful and that build him up. And I want to thank you too, Christopher, once again for all your support and your patience as I try to find the words to help you with, and this, whether this piece, whether this sketch that you sent me makes sense or not. I really appreciate the effort that you put into it, right? And I just want to move our relationship here in these challenges to a place where I can help you like 10 times better. All right? So that's all I got to say today. Thanks, everybody. And I will see you guys tomorrow with 3 more really, really great scores, really worth digging into and thinking about and discussing amongst yourselves. All right? See you soon.